I'm Olivia, 28, female, and my family just voted me onto a lumpy couch for our annual vacation, telling me I didn't contribute anything. They did this just moments before I stepped outside and turned off the power, water, and Wi-Fi to the entire beach house, services they had no idea I'd been paying for all along. The salt-laced air of Crystal Cove was supposed to be a balm for the soul. For me, it had always been a reminder of my place in the family hierarchy. The beach house, a quaint two-bedroom cottage with a sprawling porch and a direct view of the Atlantic, had been my grandparents' legacy. It was meant to be a place of joy, of shared memories and sun-drenched afternoons. In theory, it belonged to all of us. In practice, it was another stage for the long-running play of my family's dysfunction, where I was perpetually cast as the stagehand and my older sister, Chloe, was the star. This year's trip was meant to be a celebration of my mother, Susan's 55th birthday. But as I navigated the winding coastal highway, my knuckles white on the steering wheel, a familiar sense of dread coiled in my stomach. The car was mine, the gas was mine, and half the groceries in the trunk were mine. Yet I knew that once we arrived, my contributions would dissolve into the background as they always did. My sister Chloe, a vision of curated perfection at 30, sat in the passenger seat scrolling through her phone with an air of detached boredom. Her husband, Mark, was squeezed in the back with my mother, the two of them chuckling over some video on his phone. I was the designated driver, a role I'd held since I got my license at 16. It was just one of the many unspoken duties that fell to me, the responsible younger sister, the reliable one. Chloe sighed dramatically, not looking up from her screen. Liv, can you turn the AC up? It's practically tropical in here. I don't want to get all sweaty before we even arrive. I glanced at the console. The AC was already blasting. It's on the highest setting, Chloe, I said, my voice tight. Well, maybe your car's AC is just getting old, she countered, a hint of accusation in her tone, as if it were a personal failing of mine. It's a 2-year-old car, I replied, my eyes fixed on the road. Girls, please, my mother chimed in from the back, her voice laced with that weary tone she reserved for my attempts at defending myself. Let's not bicker, we're almost there. It wasn't bickering, it was the same old pattern. Chloe makes an unreasonable demand, I state a simple fact, and my mother steps in to paint me as the difficult one for not simply bending to my sister's will. Mark just grunted in agreement with my mom, ever the loyal second to his wife. This dynamic wasn't new. It was etched into the very foundation of our family. I remember my 10th birthday. I had meticulously planned a small party with a few close friends. We were going to have a sleepover, watch movies, and eat cake. The day before, Chloe, who was 12, announced that she had been invited to a last-minute concert with her popular friends. My mother, without a second thought, decided that driving Chloe and her friends was more important. My party was unceremoniously canceled. We can celebrate your birthday next weekend, honey, she'd said, already dialing another mom to coordinate the concert carpool. We never did. Chloe's social life took precedence. My disappointment was just a minor inconvenience. Then there was the matter of college. I worked 2 part-time jobs, balancing shifts at a diner and a bookstore with a full course load in computer science. I was determined to graduate with as little debt as possible. Meanwhile, Chloe, an arts major, decided she needed to find herself by studying abroad in Spain. My mother dipped into her savings, the same savings she'd told me was for emergencies only, to fund Chloe's 6-month European adventure. I saw the photos online, Chloe posing in front of monuments, Chloe sipping sangria on a beach, Chloe living a life funded by the very nest egg I was told was untouchable. When I cautiously brought it up, my mother's response was swift and defensive. Your sister needed the cultural experience, Olivia. You're so practical, you've always been good at managing on your own. It wasn't a compliment, it was a justification for the disparity. I was capable, so I was left to fend for myself. And Chloe was the artist, the free spirit, so she needed to be supported. The most telling example, however, was the beach house itself. After my grandparents passed away, the house was left to my mother. She loved the idea of it, the prestige of owning a waterfront property, but she was terrible with the practicalities. Bills were paid late or forgotten entirely. For the first few years, the trips were fraught with minor crises: a morning with no hot water, a weekend with a flickering power grid. 3 years ago, it reached a breaking point. I arrived a day early to so get things set up and found a final notice from the electric company taped to the door. The power was scheduled to be shut off the next day. Panicked, I called my mother. "Oh dear," she'd said, her voice distant. "I must have misplaced that bill. Chloe was supposed to remind me." Chloe, when I called her, was indignant. "That's not my job, Liv. I'm not mom's secretary. Besides, I'm swamped with a new brand deal." No one offered to pay the overdue balance. No one offered a solution. They just expected it to resolve itself. So I did what I always did. I paid the bill. It was a hefty sum, nearly $1,000 with the late fees. And to prevent it from happening again, I did something they never thought to ask about. I went online and systematically transferred every utility account into my name. The power, the water, the sewage, and I even upgraded the pathetic, slow internet to a high-speed fiber connection, something my IT project manager brain couldn't resist. It was easier to manage if it was all under my control, linked to my bank account. I set up autopay, and for 3 years I was the silent, invisible benefactor of their summer comfort. I never mentioned it. Part of me was waiting for them to notice, to ask, to acknowledge. They never did. They just complimented the miraculously fast Wi-Fi and commented on how the utility companies must have finally gotten their act together. As I pulled into the crushed shell driveway of the cottage, the familiar sight of the weathered gray shingles and the white-trailed porch did little to lift my spirits. The dread had solidified into a cold, hard knot. This trip wasn't for Mom's birthday, it was for them, and I was just the chauffeur with the well-stocked car. The moment the car engine went silent, Chloe was out, stretching her long limbs like a cat. "Finally, I need to feel the sand between my toes." She and Mark immediately started for the wooden walkway that led to the beach, leaving their luggage on the driveway. "Aren't you going to help with the bags?" I called out, my voice already tired. Chloe waved a dismissive hand over her shoulder. "We'll get them later, just want to see the ocean." My mother sighed, but it was a sigh of fond indulgence, not frustration. "Oh, let them have their moment, Olivia. They've been cooped up for hours." She then looked at the trunk, filled to the brim with suitcases and grocery bags. "Could you grab my suitcase, dear? My back is a little stiff." And so it began. I hauled 4 suitcases, 2 duffel bags, and 6 bags of groceries from my car into the house, my footsteps echoing in the sudden quiet. The air inside was thick and humid, the telltale sign of a house that had been closed up. My first instinct, my first ingrained action was to fix things. I walked over to the thermostat, a smart device I'd installed myself, and lowered the temperature. The hum of the central air conditioning kicking in was a small, satisfying sound. I went around opening windows to let the sea breeze chase away the stuffiness. By the time I had brought everything inside, Chloe and Mark had returned, their moods visibly improved by their brief walk. They still didn't move toward their luggage. Instead, Chloe drifted into the kitchen, opening the refrigerator I had just stocked. "Ooh, you got that expensive, sparkling water I like." "Good," she said, as if I were her personal assistant who had correctly anticipated her needs. She popped the cap and took a long drink. "Mark, babe, come look at the view from the master bedroom." They disappeared down the short hallway, their laughter floating back to me. The cottage had 2 bedrooms. One was the master, with an ensuite bathroom and a large window overlooking the ocean. The second was smaller, with 2 twin beds facing the quiet street. Then there was the living room, which housed a floral print sofa bed that had been there since my grandparents bought the place in the 80s. Its mattress was a lumpy landscape of broken springs and compressed foam. My mother busied herself supervising, which mostly involved pointing things out for me to do. "Olivia, let's get the perishables put away. Olivia, could you wipe down the counters? They feel a bit dusty." I moved on autopilot, my resentment a low hum beneath the surface of my actions. I wiped the counters, put the milk and eggs away, and started organizing the pantry. All the while, I could hear Chloe and Mark discussing which side of the master bed they each preferred. There was no question in their minds that the room was theirs. An hour later, the house was cool, the groceries were put away, and I had even unpacked my mother's suitcase for her. I finally dragged my own bag from the entryway and headed for the 2nd bedroom, my muscles aching from the drive and the manual labor. It was my default room, the one I'd always taken on these trips. As I pushed the door open, I stopped. Chloe's brightly colored suitcase was splayed. Open on one of the twin beds, clothes spilling out. Mark's duffel bag was on the other. They had claimed both bedrooms. I stood there for a long moment, a wave of cold realization washing over me. This wasn't an oversight, this was a statement. I turned and walked back into the living room where the three of them were now lounging. Chloe was on her phone, Mark was channel surfing on the TV I had set up last summer, and my mother was flipping through a magazine. Guys, I began, my voice sounding weaker than I intended. Where am I supposed to put my things? Chloe glanced up, her expression one of mild annoyance. What do you mean? You and Mark took both bedrooms, I said, pointing down the hall. Chloe let out a little laugh, a sound that was meant to be charming but grated on my nerves. Well, yeah, Mark and I need our privacy, obviously, and Mom gets the other room. It's her birthday trip after all. My mother looked up from her magazine, a placid smile on her face. She had taken the room with the two twin beds, leaving the master for Chloe and Mark. The hierarchy was clear. The married couple got the best room, the birthday girl got the second best, and I was an afterthought. So where am I supposed to sleep? I asked, the question hanging in the air-conditioned quiet. This was the moment where my mother could have stepped in. She could have said, "Don't be silly, Chloe, Olivia will share with me," or "Mark can take the couch, you girls can share." She could have shown an ounce of fairness. Instead, she just shrugged. A small, insignificant gesture that felt like a physical blow. It was a shrug that said, "This is not my problem. This is not something I care to resolve." It was Chloe who delivered the final verdict, her voice casual as if discussing the weather. "We talked about it on the way here," she said, gesturing between herself, Mark, and my mother. "We figured it was the fairest way, so we kind of took a vote, you get the couch." A vote? They had held a vote about my sleeping arrangements without me while I was concentrating on driving them safely to our destination. 3-0. The verdict was in. I stared at them, my mind struggling to process the sheer audacity. They sat there, my family, looking at me as if I were a petulant child throwing a tantrum over a toy. The expensive sparkling water Chloe was drinking, the cool air on their skin, the high-speed Wi-Fi Mark was using to stream TV, all of it was flowing through this house because of me, and they had just voted me onto the couch. The silence in the room stretched, thick and uncomfortable. It was broken only by the tinny sound of a game show from the television. I looked from my sister's smug face to my brother-in-law's careful neutrality, and finally to my mother, who had returned her attention to her magazine, refusing to meet my eyes. The casual cruelty of it all was breathtaking. "You voted," I repeated, my voice dangerously quiet. "You held a vote and decided I should sleep on that lumpy relic from 1985. And Chloe rolled her eyes, the picture of a grieved innocence. "Oh, don't be so dramatic, Liv. It's not a big deal. It's a pull-out bed. It's fine for a week." "It's not fine," I said, a tremor of anger entering my voice. "The mattress feels like a bag of rocks and wrenches. You know I have a bad back." This was true. A minor car accident a few years prior had left me with chronic lower back pain. It was manageable, but a bad night's sleep could leave me stiff and aching for days. They all knew this. "We all have to make sacrifices," Mark chimed in, his tone attempting to be reasonable but coming across as condescending. "It's a full house. Someone had to take one for the team." Someone, not him, the healthy 32-year-old man, not Chloe, his wife, not my mother, me. The team had decided that someone was me. I turned my gaze back to my mother, pleading with my eyes for her to intervene, to be a parent, to restore some semblance of fairness. "Mom, are you really okay with this?" She finally looked up, her expression a careful mask of resignation. "Olivia, Chloe, and Mark are a married couple. They need their own room, and it's my birthday trip. I think it's perfectly reasonable for me to have a proper bed." She paused, then delivered the line that would echo in my mind for years to come. The line that severed the final, frayed thread of my filial duty. Besides, she said with that little shrug, that devastating, dismissive gesture, you didn't help pay for anything anyway. The words hit me with the force of a physical slap. All the air went out of my lungs. You didn't help pay for anything anyway. I stared at her, my mouth slightly agape. My vision tunneled until it was just her face, her placid expression, completely oblivious to the depth of her ignorance and the cruelty of her words. She had no idea. She had no idea that the very lights illuminating her Agazine, the cool air preventing her from breaking a sweat, the water she would soon use to make her evening tea were all flowing because Olivia had paid for them. For 3 years, I had paid for everything. The mortgage on the house was paid off, a gift from my grandparents, but the cost of maintaining it, the utilities, the taxes, the repairs, was very real. I had shouldered a significant portion of that burden without a word, and my reward was to be told that I had contributed nothing. A strange and unnerving calm settled over me. The hurt, which had been a burning fire in my chest, was suddenly extinguished, replaced by something cold and hard and clear. It was the clarity of a final straw. The kind of clarity that makes impossible decisions feel simple. I saw the entire history of our family in that one moment. Every overlooked achievement, every dismissed feeling, every time I was the responsible one while Chloe was the celebrated one. It all culminated in this one breathtakingly unjust declaration. They didn't see me. They didn't see my contributions, my efforts, my sacrifices. They saw a resource, a utility in human form, and when they thought that resource wasn't providing, they relegated it to the furniture. I looked at the three of them, my so-called family, and I felt a profound and sudden detachment, as if I were watching a scene from a movie. These were not people who loved me. Love doesn't keep a tally, but it also doesn't erase your contributions and then punish you for a deficit that doesn't exist. My expression must have changed because Chloe's smugness faltered for a second. What's that look for? I took a slow breath. The anger was gone, replaced by a quiet, resolute purpose. I gave them a small, tight nod. You know what, you're right, I said, my voice eerily calm. You voted, it's 3 against 1, I'll take the couch. My mother smiled, relieved. There, see, that's my practical Olivia. And Chloe looked smug again. Good, glad that's settled. I just need to make a quick work call, I said, pulling my phone from my pocket. I'll be right back. I turned and walked toward the sliding glass door that led to the porch. The cool metal of the handle felt solid and real in my hand. As I stepped outside, the salty air hit my face and it felt like the first breath of a new life. They thought they had won. They thought they had put me in my place one last time. They had no idea that the call I was about to make wasn't to my boss. It was to the electric company, the water department, and the internet provider. And I wasn't making a call, I was logging ins. The porch was my sanctuary. From there, I could see the waves crashing against the shore, a relentless, powerful rhythm that had always calmed me. But tonight it wasn't calming, it was empowering. The ocean didn't ask for permission, it just was, and I was about to learn from its example. I leaned against the railing, my back to the house, shielding my phone screen from any curious glances. My heart was pounding, not with anger anymore, but with a kind of wild, exhilarating purpose. My fingers flew across the screen, my muscle memory from years of IT work taking over. First, the power company. I opened their app, my thumbprint granting me immediate access. I navigated to the My Services tab. There it was, Crystal Cove, 12 Seaview Lane, billed to Olivia Martin, paid in full every month for the last 36 months. I tapped on service options. A menu appeared, report an outage, view my bill, transfer service. And there at the bottom, the option I was looking for, disconnect service. A confirmation screen popped up. Are you sure you want to disconnect service at this address? Please note that a reconnection fee may apply. I thought of my mother's shrug, of Chloe's smug smile. I tapped confirm. A small green check mark appeared. Your request has been processed. Service will be disconnected within 15 minutes. One down. Next, the water and sewage utility. It was a less modern website, clunky and slow, but I knew my way around it. I logged in, Olivia Martin, account in good standing. I found the end service request form. I filled in the details, citing property vacated as the reason. The system was less automated. It said the request would be processed within 1 business hour. It was 6 p.m. on a Friday, close enough. the water would be gone by the time they finished their dinner, if not sooner. A two down. Finally, the crown jewel, the internet, the high-speed fiber connection that was my pride and joy. Chloe and her influencer career were utterly dependent on a constant, reliable stream of Wi-Fi. Mark was probably still streaming his game show. I opened the provider's app. It was sleek and efficient. Hello, Olivia, it greeted me. I felt a grim smile touch my lips. Hello, indeed. I navigated to the account page. Pause or cancel service. I didn't want to pause it. I wanted it gone. I clicked see. Ansel, it asked for a reason. I typed a single word, unnecessary. The final confirmation screen appeared. Your service will be terminated immediately. Your final bill will be prorated. I hit the button without a moment's hesitation. The Wi-Fi signal indicator at the top of my phone screen vanished. Switching to 5G, it was done. I stood there for a moment, the phone heavy in my hand. I felt a strange cocktail of emotions, a giddy sense of freedom, a pang of guilt that was quickly smothered by resolve, and a deep, profound sadness for the family I wished I had. I slipped the phone back into my pocket and walked back inside. The air was still cool, the lights were still on, Mark was still watching TV, Chloe was texting, a slight frown on her face. The Wi-Fi just cut out," she complained to no one in particular. "Probably just a temporary outage," my mother said dismissively. "It happens." I didn't say a word. I walked quietly to the hall where I had left my suitcase. I picked it up. I went into the kitchen and grabbed my car keys from the hook by the door. Then I turned to the front door and grabbed the small, unlabeled key that hung on its own. The master key, the only key that opened the front door, the back door, and the storm shutters. My grandfather had it made years ago. I was the only one who knew where the spare was hidden, a piece of information I wasn't about to share. My mother finally noticed my movements. "What are you doing, Olivia?" "I'm leaving," I said, my voice evened. All three of them stared at me. "Leaving? What are you talking about? You can't leave," Chloe said, standing up. "We just got here." "I can and I am," I said, opening the front door. "I've decided I'd rather not spend my vacation sleeping on a couch." My mother stood up as well, her face a mixture of confusion and annoyance. "Don't be ridiculous, Olivia. We settled this. Stop being so sensitive." "I'm done being sensitive," I said, my voice gaining strength. "I'm done being practical, I'm just done." And then, as if on cue, the world plunged into darkness. The television clicked off. The lights went out. The gentle hum of the air conditioner died, leaving a sudden, shocking silence. In the dim twilight filtering through the windows, I could see their stunned faces. "What was that?" Mark exclaimed, fumbling for his phone's flashlight. "Did you do that?" "It's a power outage," my mother said, her voice wavering. "The whole block must be out." But I knew it wasn't the whole block, it was just this house. I gave them one last look, their faces illuminated by the pale glow of their phone screens. "Enjoy your stay," I said softly. I stepped outside, closed the door behind me, and heard the distinct final click of the lock. I walked to my car, my suitcase rolling behind me on the shell driveway, the sound unnaturally loud in the new quiet. I got in, started the engine, and didn't look back as I pulled out onto the coastal road, driving away from the dark, silent house that held my family, who were only just beginning to realize the true cost of taking me for granted. The drive away from Crystal Cove was surreal. The windows were down, and the night air, thick with the smell of salt and freedom, whipped through my hair. I drove for an hour, heading inland, the triumphant pounding in my chest slowly giving way to a shaky mix of adrenaline and anxiety. I had done it. I had actually done it. I found a small, clean-looking hotel in a town called Port Blossom, a place far enough away to feel safe but close enough that I could, if I chose, drive back in a few hours. I checked in, paid for a room with a king-sized bed, the most comfortable-looking bed I had ever seen, and locked the door behind me. I dropped my suitcase, kicked off my shoes, and fell face-first onto the crisp, cool duvet. For about 10 minutes, there was silence. I savored it. It was the sound of peace, of a world without my family's incessant demands and casual dismissals. Then my phone buzzed. It was a text from Chloe. "Chloe, the power is out. Did you flip a breaker switch on your way out? Not funny, Liv." I stared at the message, a grim smile on my face. I didn't reply. A minute later, another buzz. Chloe, seriously, where's the breaker box? It's getting hot in here. Then a message from my mother. Mom, Olivia, your sister is right. This is not the time for games. Call me. I set my phone to do not disturb. I wasn't ready to talk. I wanted them to sit in the dark and the heat for a while. I wanted them to experience the full scope of their helplessness. I took a long hot shower, reveling in the unlimited high-pressure water, and changed into comfortable clothes. I ordered room service, a decadent burger and fries, something I would never have done with my family, who would have criticized the expense. As I ate, I turned my phone back on. The screen lit up with a barrage of notifications. 15 missed calls, 10 from Chloe, 5 from my mother, and a flood of texts. Chloe, Olivia, pick up your phone. This isn't funny anymore. Chloe, the water isn't working either. What did you do? Chloe, Mark is freaking out. There's no cell service in the house. We have to walk to the end of the street to get a signal. Chloe, I swear, when you get back here, you are in so much trouble. Mom, Olivia Marie Martin, you call me this instant. This is the most childish, selfish stunt you have ever pulled. Mom, we are your family. You can't just abandon us in a dark house. What if there's an emergency? Mom, and you took the only key. We're trapped in here. Trapped, the irony was rich. I had felt trapped in that family dynamic my entire life. Now they were getting a small, literal taste of it. The messages continued, their tone shifting from anger to panic. Mark, Liv, this is Mark. Listen, we get it, you're mad, but you need to come back. Susan is really upset. Chloe, my phone is at 20%. I can't charge it. My brand collaboration posts were supposed to go up tonight. You're ruining my career. That last one almost made me laugh out loud. Her career. Her entire world was so small, so self-centered, that a temporary inability to post on social media felt like a professional catastrophe. I finished my burger feeling more powerful and in control than I had in years. They had no idea what was happening. They thought I had flipped a switch, that I had played a simple prank. They still hadn't connected the dots. They still hadn't considered the possibility that the infrastructure of their comfort was something they had never once thought to question. I slept for 10 hours, a deep, uninterrupted sleep in the glorious king-sized bed. I woke up feeling refreshed, my back completely pain-free. It was Saturday morning. I ordered coffee and pastries from a local bakery and sat by the window watching the world go by. My phone had more messages. They had clearly spent a miserable night. Chloe, it was 80 degrees in here all night. We couldn't sleep. The food in the fridge is going to spoil. Mom, we had to use bottled water to brush our teeth. This is unacceptable, Olivia. Chloe, we're leaving. We'll just break a window or something. We'll send you the bill. I knew they wouldn't. The windows were storm-proof, and breaking one would be a monumental effort. Plus, the thought of paying for a repair would be abhorrent to them. I decided it was time. I had let them stew long enough. I finished my coffee, took a deep, fortifying breath, and dialed my mother's number. She answered on the first ring, her voice a frantic, angry torrent. Olivia, finally, where are you? You get back here right now and fix this. No, I said, my voice calm and steady. I'm not coming back, and there's nothing to fix. There was a stunned silence on the other end of the line. I could hear Chloe's voice in the background, sharp and questioning. What is she saying? What do you mean there's nothing to fix? My mother demanded, her voice shaking with a mixture of rage and confusion. There's no power, no water, nothing. You have to call the utility companies. I already have, I said simply. And what did they say? When are they coming? This was the moment, the truth laid bare. They aren't coming, Mom, I said, keeping my tone even and deliberate. I didn't report an outage, I canceled the services. The silence that followed was more profound than before. I could practically hear the gears turning in her mind, struggling to compute what I had just said. You, what? She finally whispered. You can't do that, the bills, the accounts aren't in your name. Yes, they are, I replied. They have been for 3 years. The electricity, the water, the Wi-Fi, it's all in my name. It's all paid for by me every single month from my bank account. I let that sink in. I imagined her standing there in the hot, dim living room, the useless television a dark mirror, the reality of the situation crashing down on her. Chloe's voice suddenly erupted, loud and clear. She must have snatched the phone. "You're lying. Why would you do that? Mom handles the bills." "Does she, Chloe?" I shot back, the calm finally cracking to reveal the steel beneath. Ask her. Ask her about the disconnection noticed 3 years ago. Ask her why the Wi-Fi suddenly got 10 times faster last summer. Ask her if she's paid a single utility bill for this house since 2022. I heard muffled talking, a frantic, whispered argument. My mother's voice was thin and reedy. Then Chloe came back on the line, her fury undiminished, but now tinged with a note of uncertainty. "That doesn't give you the right to do this. We're stranded." "You stranded me first," I said, my voice low and intense. "You stranded me when you decided, as a family, that I was worth less than a comfortable bed. You stranded me every time you overlooked my contributions, took my help for granted, and treated me like an inconvenience." "Oh, stop, Bane. Geez, so dramatic," she spat. "Dramatic," I laughed, a sharp, humorless sound. "Let me tell you what's dramatic, Chloe. It's dramatic to work 2 jobs to get through college while your sister posts vacation photos from Spain paid for by the family emergency fund. It's dramatic to have your 10th birthday party canceled for your sister's concert and then never have it rescheduled. And it's especially dramatic to be told you haven't contributed anything to a house you've been secretly keeping afloat for years, and then be voted onto the couch." I was breathing heavily, the words pouring out of me, a torrent of every suppressed injustice I had ever felt. "I paid for the water you drink, the power that charges your phone, the internet that fuels your career," I continued, my voice rising. "I drove you here in my car, using my gas, and bought half the food that is now probably rotting in that powerless refrigerator. And my reward? To be dismissed, disrespected, and demoted to the furniture. No, I'm done." There was dead silence on the phone. For the first time in my life, I had left them speechless. Finally, my mother's voice returned, small and broken. "Olivia, I didn't know." "That's the point, Mom," I said, my voice softening with a deep, weary sadness. "You didn't know because you never asked, you never looked, you never saw me. You just saw Chloe, the shining star, and me, the reliable, practical planet that quietly orbited her, making sure her world was comfortable." Tears were streaming down my face now, hot and silent. I didn't want a parade, I didn't want a medal, I just wanted to be seen, I just wanted a little respect. A bed, that's all I wanted, and you couldn't even give me that. "What do you want us to do?" she asked, her voice trembling. "I want you to leave," I said. "I want you to pack your bags, find a way to get the door open. I suggest calling a locksmith. I'm sure they make emergency calls, and go home. And then I want you to think. I want all of you to think long and hard about how you've treated me, not just yesterday, but for the last 20 years. "And the power?" she asked weakly. "I'll turn it back on after you've gone," I said. "And I'll be changing the locks. From now on, access to this house, my grandparents' house, will be on my terms. This is not a free hotel. It's a family legacy, and it's time we all started acting like a family, a real one." I paused, waiting for an argument, for another outburst. None came. There was only the sound of my mother's quiet sobbing. "I'll text you the number for a locksmith in Crystal Cove," I said, my voice businesslike again. "I suggest you call them soon. Goodbye, Mom." I ended the call before she could reply. I sank back onto the bed, the phone falling from my hand. It was over. The confrontation I had both dreaded and craved my entire life was over. I was exhausted, emotionally drained, but underneath it all, a small, resilient seed of hope was beginning to sprout. The rest of that Saturday was quiet. I didn't hear from my family for hours. I took a walk around Port Blossom, browsed in little shops, and ate lunch at an outdoor cafe, feeling strangely light. I was a free agent, untethered from the obligations and expectations that had defined me for so long. Around 4 p.m., I received a single text from a number I didn't recognize. This is A1 Locksmith. The occupants at 12 Seaview Lane have requested a non-destructive entry. Just need verbal confirmation from the account holder, Olivia Martin, that you approve the service. My family, it seemed, had taken my advice. I called the number, confirmed my identity, and gave the approval. I imagined the scene: the locksmith arriving, my mother's embarrassed explanation, Chloe's impatient tapping foot marks awkward silence. The cost, I knew, would be painful for them, another unexpected expense in a vacation that had turned into a financial and emotional disaster. An hour later, a text from my mother: "We are leaving." It was stark, devoid of emotion, but it was what I had asked for. I waited. I didn't want to turn the utilities back on while they were still there. I needed to know they were truly gone. Around 7 p.m., another text, this time from Chloe. "Keys are under the mat on the back porch. The locksmith charged $300, just so you know." No apology, no acknowledgement, just a passive-aggressive jab about the cost. Part of me bristled, but another, newer part of me simply let it go. It would take more than one afternoon for 20 years of behavior to change. I waited until the next morning. On Sunday, I checked out of my lovely hotel room and drove back to Crystal Cove. The 2-hour drive was completely different this time. The dread was gone, replaced by a quiet sense of ownership. As I pulled into the shell driveway, the house looked the same, but it felt different. It felt like mine. I found the keys right where Chloe had said they'd be. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. The air was stale and hot. They had left in a hurry. There were a few empty water bottles on the counter and a pile of damp towels in the hallway. They had tried to clean up, but the haste was evident. On the kitchen table was a piece of paper, a note from my mother. "Olivia, I am sorry. I didn't understand. I should have. We will talk when we get home. Love, Mom." It wasn't perfect. It was vague and defensive, but it was a start. It was more than I had gotten from her in my entire adult life. It was an admission of fault, however small. I spent the next hour walking through the house, my house. Then I sat on the porch, pulled out my phone, and one by one I reconnected the services. I called the companies this time, explaining that I had canceled an error and was moving back in. There would be reconnection fees, but it was a price I was willing to pay. As I was on the phone with the power company, I saw a technician's truck pull up a few houses down. Within 30 minutes, the glorious hum of the air conditioner returned. The lights flickered on, the house came back to life. My relationship with my family is not fixed. It is fractured and fragile, and we are slowly, cautiously trying to piece it back together. The conversations that followed were hard and painful. There were tears and accusations, but for the first time they listened. Chloe still struggles to see beyond her own world, but even she admitted grudgingly that she had been unfair. My mother is trying the hardest. She is learning to see me not as an extension of the family's needs, but as an individual with her own feelings and value. I still manage the beach house, but it's different now. The utility bills are sent to a shared family email address, and the cost is split 3 ways, with the money transferred to my account at the beginning of each month. There are rules now, written down and agreed upon: a schedule for visits, a clear policy on who gets which room, decided far in advance. I set a boundary that weekend, a line drawn in the sand as clear and definitive as the tide. I learned that my practicality and responsibility were not liabilities to be exploited, but strengths to be respected. And my family learned that even the quietest, most reliable planet in the orbit has a breaking point, and when it breaks, it can be powerful enough to turn out all the lights. So I have to ask you, the listeners, was I wrong to pull the plug, or was it the only way to make them finally see the light? What do you do when the people who are supposed to build you up are the ones taking you for granted?